Handmade by Chewbacca himself, Chewie's bowcaster is a weapon that pays tribute to an ancient weapon design prevalent in Wookiee culture. Though most bowcasters are traditionally made of wood, Chewie's expertise with mechanics and engineering allowed him to create a design using the power pack from a standard Stormtrooper blaster, along with an automatic cocking feature that traditional bowcasters lacked. Unlike many blasters, Chewie's bowcaster shoots physical ammunition in the form of quarrels, a metal projectile enveloped in plasma energy. These quarrels gain astounding momentum due to the two polarizing orbs balanced on each end of the bow, which provide a magnetic field that boosts the quarrels along the barrel of the bowcaster. Due to its physical ammunition payload, Chewie is required to carry ammunition with him at all times, stored within the pouches on his bandolier. Bowcasters are much more powerful than a standard blaster, and require a Wookiee's strength to shoot accurately. Well, sometimes.
Can I try that? I like this thing.
This is not a news show. It's a talk show. We do not give financial, legal, medical, or any kind of advice. We are not responsible for the actions of our listeners. You are responsible for you. If anything offends you, we were only joking. Promise.
Welcome to the Doom Kitchen, or I'm back in the kitchenette. I'm here today with an old friend of mine, Nick Reachable, and we were both triggered by that scene in Star Wars. And that was the moment that you knew for sure that they hate you and they don't care about Star Wars. What do you think?
Yeah, that was a bad moment. All of us who grew up with Star Wars and West End games and all of the expanded universe stuff through the 80s and the 90s, we knew they were just saying, this is not you at all. This deadbeat dad who can fire a bowcaster.
It was rotten just because you're sitting there in the theater and you're surrounded by a whole bunch of people that they're not Star Wars people, or at least not the Star Wars people that we knew, and they're all, normies, and we're filled with this place, and they don't even know. They don't know that the freaking bowcaster is something only a Wookiee could use. They didn't care. They didn't have the toys. They didn't grow up with the lore. But hey, next year it's going to be Esther Nanny Jones, right? And they're gonna pass the tampon on. Esther Tranny Jones. Yeah, yeah, she will have to save the world from TERFs.
That's right.
by finding some artifact and just giving it away to a certain group of people with long noses.
Well, did you see this Bruce Willis stuff this week? That Bruce Willis has sold his twin to basically be whored out. Like we can now see Bruce Willis in movies that Bruce Willis was never in.
Yeah, I did hear about that. That they have this CGI thing, and Bruce Willis is vaccine injured, so he's going to be gone soon. So I think that's one of the reasons that they did that. But this was a company out of...
He was in those 12, 15 movies in the last couple of years. He's married to a young woman. They're basically ripping him off.
Oh, just milking him for everything that he's worth as he declines more and more.
No, absolutely. He would show up to these shoots and be on set for 2 days, one day, and then they would have to manufacture an entire movie around him. And that's why if you go into IMDb, in the last couple of years, he's been in 17 movies that you've never heard of. Well, that was what was happening.
I'm sure he's in, they probably are using him in video games and stuff as well.
I don't know. But I guess they can now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a Russian company, isn't that right?
I don't know. I'm just wondering how long until Disney owns every 80s action star.
Yeah. that's kind of how we were going to go here is talk about Disney and how they bought every single nostalgia brand that we grew up with and turned it into poop.
Yeah, it's astonishing. And like the one, like the brands that they didn't buy are like, this is the terrible thing, right? The brands they bought, they've driven into the ground, and then the brands that they didn't buy, like, committed suicide. Like DC is now going to be franchising out its comics. It looks like that's what's going to happen. So like they didn't completely like, I mean, Warner owns it, but I mean, what's the alternative? It's like Disney or death.
Yeah. And are people watching it anymore? Since they've wokeified everything, that it's anybody that's like us is not into it, and then there's all of these new people that they're trying to shove it in the face of, and
No,
they can sell it with.
I don't think people are watching She-Hulk.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, I guess there's people hate watching it because I get a weekly report about what's going on in She-Hulk from Brad Binkley and Cam Harless on the Propaganda Report, and they talk about the She-Hulk moment of the week, and usually it's something extremely cringeworthy. Well, I think that there was one week where they didn't have anything, so only one.
Well, here's the weird thing: are we in now a media ecology where like the product is not the product, but it's the product cycle involved in hate watching stuff?
Yeah, I think that's how it works. So they took everything that we grew up with, everything that we have soft feelings for, and then they turned it into poop, and now it's and they shoved it in your face as well. They did it. I know that it was done to demoralize us. It's something. There's something to that, you know. And what do? Do you just I've heard the idea of watching the old stuff, you know, like just going back and watching the old X-Men cartoon. Although they weren't perfect, they were still pretty awesome for Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah, they adapted some of those great Claremont storylines. They were good. That was good stuff.
And then what? The old Warner Brothers Batman that we watched, you know, before Tiny Toons or after, I can't remember, whenever back in those days, whenever we were probably about 13 or so.
Yeah, that show holds up. It's a good show.
Yeah. Or was it?
Batman,
it was Animaniacs.
Series.
Yeah. Oh man, it was solid. It was really fun, and it gave you the feeling. It's like you're in the world. But
well, it's a question, Andy. I don't know. Like, do you find yourself where you can't enjoy mass entertainment anymore? Is it like, are you so disaffected from like mass entertainment? Like nothing can give you pleasure that's coming out of this. Yeah.
Exactly. I've been beaten down by this ridiculous culture war so much that whenever I see it within everything that I grew up with, that it's I can't even watch it, and I don't want to support the companies because the companies have showed us exactly where they stand.
So here's a crazy thing I was thinking about the other day. I looked up Dukes of Hazzard, and I was like, what is the history of Dukes of Hazzard? And it ends up being like the idea of a Jewish guy in New York, and it's produced in California, and it's manufactured for people, you know, basically south of the Mason-Dixon line. So like, obviously there's this entire media complex that's producing an imaginary, like, sort of like world for like the South. Like you could like, we could grow up and we could play with our General Lee toys or whatever. Is it merely that like these people like just decided they weren't going to produce entertainment for us anymore? Or is it deeper than that?
I wonder if other generations have had the same thing. I'm sure that whenever I want to say it was about 2000 when they started rehashing all of the stuff that was 70s nostalgia, and I mean like the Bunch remake, and I saw that abomination, and it had all of the really obnoxious stuff about that time, and it ended with a stepbrother stepsister romance, which was really gross. So they do the things, they try to take everything that was a wholesome show, or I guess semi wholesome. I'm sure it wasn't wholesome at its time, because I think probably the most taboo thing about that show was that it was a divorced family at the time. But by the time we got to the early 2000s, when they released that piece of poo, we get even more taboo things, and that's that's kind of extreme. Greg and Marcia hooking up.
Oh, I don't remember that at all. Wow, I need to go back and see
yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's the same ideas that they're trying to promote through other things. There's been this stepbrother stepsister grossness that's being promoted for the past decade or so.
Well, I was thinking about this the other day, like how quickly it can change. Like, let's say it's 1966 and you turn on your television, right? If I'm not mistaken, you could still watch Mr. Ed. You could see like Wilbur and a talking horse. And then you turn on your TV 5 years later, and it's Archie Bunker and All in the Family.
Great show.
I mean, that's a pretty quick turnaround, right? Like,
yeah,
6-7 years in pop culture, and you're like, wow, I'm in like a completely different world. It seems like we passed through one of those things.
So you've been rewatching episodes of All in the Family, and how would that go today, and it go over in today's society?
Yeah, that's a crazy thing, man, because like the producer Norman Lear, his politics are clearly like on the left, and Archie is clearly on the right, and there's a lot of like mockery of Archie, and yet you still see the reasonableness of Archie at times. I think in watching those episodes again, just the craziness is that you could talk about things like a classic example of this is B. Arthur, who went on to be in Golden Girls, like, and that's probably what she's known for now. But in All in the Family, she played this cousin of Edith named Maud, and she was this crazy Rockefeller, Franklin Delano Roosevelt liberal, and she was the anti like Archie. But when you saw her, you realize she was foolish, right? And Archie could be foolish, but there's no like. But the show kind of like was there's this median American kind of thing, and it's like we don't like see any entertainment that really makes fun of the left. That's what's like that's what I see as being completely absent. Like you watch like All in the Family, and there's the nephew Mike Stivic, who's like a total like Libby, the pinko meathead kind of guy, and you don't like him. You like Archie more. And even though you might be like, okay, occasionally Mike says something that's reasonable, you're still like, I hate the guy. Like you never see there's nothing in popular entertainment that ever asks you to like dislike a liberal.
I think it's because they take themselves way more seriously than they should be taken. That's why they overreact to everything. And anytime somebody says something that's off the reservation, they're calling for their heads. Kanye yesterday came out with a White Lives Matter t-shirt. Yeah, and they're freaking out right now. They're apoplectic. They're just
no shit,
all
dude.
over the place.
Like, I was curious for how long that would be on the front page of TMZ. It's like every damn moment of the last, like, TMZ is like clickbait, the fastest thing they can find, and that was like clickbait gold.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty amusing. I tend to have my social media curated in a way that I don't have to deal with the blue checks, and I don't have to deal with them as much because I don't interact with them too much. But if I do, it's I can stir up a little bit of a shitstorm and then do my best to mute and avoid. Just there's there's so many people that if they're not bots, they're still bots because they just repeat the line no matter what. So they're completely programmed. So let's see.
No, I'm with you, man.
Yeah, you've been.
Sorry, I was just thinking about this the other day. Like, I was thinking about reading a bunch of like Philip K. Dick novels again because like his big theme is people become like androids. Like like the android isn't human, but like what happens when humans become not human, and then where does the line exist between like being a simulacrum of a human being and it certainly seems like social media has exacerbated that.
Right. In fact, that's what the transhumanists at this point are on about is the machines are they want to create a society of machines that are tainted with human stuff. So it's human tainted machines is what they want us to devolve into, and that's pretty creepy, especially when you see the metaverse and how they kind of want to just plug everybody into that. What show was it? I was listening to a show the other day, and they're talking about the metaverse was too late because if they had been able to get the virus panic that they had a couple of years ago at the same time as the metaverse, then we probably wouldn't see as many people. They would just all be just plugged into their machine.
That's a crazy thought.
Yeah. They pulled the trigger early, I guess. Or at least that's what we speculate. Yeah.
Yeah, they pre-ejaculated. That's astonishing.
I think that the reason they did it is, well, they're like, yeah, we'll just come up with another virus or, whatever, nuclear war. Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you found a solace in the old stuff lately, and you've been going through a wealth of comic books, as in the Judge Dredd series.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the early stuff from like the late 70s up until like 85, 86. It starts from like for my taste, it starts to like go down after that. I mean, a lot of people think it picked up after the 90s or in the early 2000s, but there's just so much like pop culture that we can enjoy that's old. I kind of feel like the future is the past for me. But hey.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it, and same with music. I mean, with this whole culture war that we have going on, I've been a fan of The Cure since I was a 8-year-old kid, and I get an email that's like, hey, we're doing this big concert benefit for the Ukraine and giving all our money for Zelensky's cocaine habit, and so I don't get too excited about that. I'm like, well, I can't listen to my favorite band now, or I don't want to. And that's why at the end of the show, I always promote somebody or try to promote them. Not that I have such a big forum or anything like that, but at least I'm exposing the right people to people that are making music that is about the scenario that we're going through, that is not going to be promoted by the mainstream in any way whatsoever.
Yeah. I think that's good. Like, promote these other forking paths. One of the things I think about is there's Chesterton, the British writer, Catholic, whatever. He has this long poem called The Ballad of the White Horse, in which he says the world has ended many times before. So to think about the apocalypse as something that has happened in the past over and over, instead of something that is happening in the future imminently, is like kind of is somewhat comforting. This is kind of weird. Like, this is weirdly, we were talking about Star Wars. I don't know if noticed, but did you see that, like, where Luke was on that island and Rey goes to see him? Do you know what that island was?
No, I don't.
Yeah, so that's Skellig Michael. That was the island where Irish monks preserved like the religious text of the West. And
oh, really?
In the Dark Ages, yes. So as like the Roman Empire collapsed, they were on that island with their books, preserving the heritage of like Western culture. So then what do? They put Luke on actual that island, like, and then they betray him. I mean, it's this like but just the juxtaposition of like Mark Hamill, like ashes in his mouth, having to betray his great character, and he's on Skellig Michael, one of the most iconic like places in Western history. Madness.
I wow, I didn't know that at all. And it wasn't just betray himself or betray his character. They were betraying us. And then Mark Hamill comes out. It's funny because that's a library, and Mark Hamill came out just a few weeks ago talking about making sure that all these crazy trans books stay in libraries, the things that have how to perform certain sex acts and things like that to stay in libraries. And he was mad about people trying to get rid of that stuff. So that's weird that it relates to the whole library thing. Speaking also of Mark Hamill, he was part of the reason that the Batman series that we talked about just a little while ago was great. The Joker was I used to say that Mark Hamill's the best Joker. Now it's I don't even know who to say that is the best Joker.
No, I think
Caesar, maybe.
For me, he's still the guy. He nailed the voice. He had he's still a remarkable voice actor. Too bad his politics are so shit.
Well, yeah, I don't want to support anybody that's not that's holding us back in a way, or just preventing things from getting better. And I think that's really what most of these people are doing. They're not necessarily holding us back. They're just preventing us from uniting and saying no to what's coming. And what's coming, they definitely use the cultural vehicle in order to steamroll us.
Well, dude, here's the thing, right? We're in a weird like moment when all of these dudes, all this culture that we feel loyal to is now like all these guys are like 70, 80 years old. Like what happens when all these fuckers are dead and then there's no like real warmth around like the old stuff because it's all gone. Like we're like in the we're like it's the last like the last like fart of 20th century mass culture, and people are just trying to inhale as much of it as they can.
Yeah, it'll just all be created by AI. In fact, the music I made for the show, I didn't actually make it. I used AI to make the music so that I wouldn't have to deal with rights, and to get artwork done really quick. I just used one of those AI art generators, and I think everything is going to convert to AI in some capacity. It is what is being pushed at, because we're in a kind of industrial revolution at the moment. We've got robot slavery as far as the artificial intelligence. I'll never humanize those things. I think that is one of the dirtiest things that people could possibly do is to try to attribute humanity to these things that are not real and not really creative. They're just taking what's creative about us and spinning it around and making some sort of as a computer estimation of what we might like. And maybe all of the art is going to be pushed in that way. Soon we'll see a Batman series that's just completely made by algorithms, and that's going to be maybe a little better than what Warner Brothers has been doing lately.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's strange. I mean, you think about like what does it mean to enjoy a piece of art? Well, there are like some analytic institutions that are involved. Like you have to think there's a product, there's a maker of the product, there's an author or an intelligence behind it informing it. etc. So, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to impute that authorial function to a computer, something that isn't human, right? I don't really want to play that game.
Right, and yeah, they want you to do that though. I mean, they've got these AI girlfriends for people on. It's some app where people are texting to their AI girlfriend, which is got to be really lonely and sad and pathetic and annoying, all at the same time. Just imagine it's not just a woman. It's a computer's estimation of a woman, so it's going to be even more annoying.
So it's you could basically have an AI escort.
Yeah, and basically that's what it is, because if they want to upgrade it to take the relationship to the next level, they have to pay some money.
Yeah.
So some things work the same way in the real world as they do in the computer world. But yeah, attributing humanity to these things, I think is a huge problem. But I'm going to go back to all of the things that they've destroyed, and I know that the most egregious one recently has been Lord of the Rings. Have you even watched any of it?
So I have to admit, I've just hate watched it, like, vicariously, like clips and so forth. I have a real problem with it. My fundamental problem with it is that Amazon can only adapt the appendices from Return of the King. So anything that is official Legendarium stuff from like the History of the Middle Earth or the Silmarillion, that can't be adapted. So you have a TV show that, in order to basically evade copyright infringement, has to violate the author's vision of what he was trying to do. So from that point of view, I'm out. Even, more than like it's just like it doesn't get Tolkien. But yeah, I wouldn't be down. I'm just not down with it, man.
It looked really bad in the advertisement, and I laughed about it, and then someone even asked me, "Are you going to watch that?" No.
Well, dude, it's sort of like, I mean, go back and like read like something like Aristotle's Poetics, and when he rates everything, and he says the least important thing is spectacle. You need a ton of stuff in order to buy people's affection and, intelligence and so forth before you try to bring out the spectacle. But it seems like it's just spectacle. There's nothing else beyond it. You look at it and you see, oh, well, that looks a little bit like, Jackson's movies, but it's just empty. It's sort of like if you were to step onto like a set and there were no actors and there was just the set. That's what it seems like to me.
Yeah, a lot of movies have been like that for maybe at least 20 more years of just giving them the special effects fireworks show instead of giving anything that means anything. But this is Lord of the Rings. This is one of the greatest things ever produced, and all of a sudden we're watching black lesbian dwarves do weird stuff, and then
no, yeah, man, it's
yeah.
ridiculous. I think back like when the Jackson trilogy came out, and we were like, well, we're not going to see Saruman die, or we're not going to see the Shire at the end of the trilogy, or we're not going to see Tom Bombadil. Like, people got really upset over stuff like that, and now you're like, wow. If those were our problems.
Yeah. So yeah, they aren't going to give us anything that we want to see, that we wanted to see on the screen at all. They the last movie series, they just embellished The Hobbit as much as they possibly could and stretched it out into 3 movies so they could really milk it. But they did a good job with
Tolkien is an unwinnable proposition because he explicitly said, I'm creating an ethnocentric fantasy. This is an ethnocentric fantasy about Little England. And then you're like, okay, let's actually try to like make that ethnocentric fantasy multi-ethnic. I mean, that's the dilemma. It's like, people love this property, but the people who are in charge of it seem to think, well, they don't know why they like it.
Yeah. Well, because it's a classic. It really tells what we're into, and fantasy in general, as far as it's never been like that. In fact, like I'm hearing that people's D&D campaigns now they're trying to woke police those.
Yeah, I know. And now we've got like this new D&D edition coming out, or this anti-edition D&D 1. Do you know anything about it?
No, I don't. Tell me about it.
Well, D&D has basically decided that they're done with editions. From now on, for as long as human beings exist, there's going to be one D&D, and that's going to be called D&D 1. But it's going to be a variation of D&D 5th edition. So it's going to have stuff like advantage dice, inspiration, hero points. From what I understand, I've never really been that much into 5th edition. But of course, there's all the woke stuff. Like we need to rethink things like race and, bleh.
So, how oppressed are you in this fantasy world where everybody is oppressed?
That's right. Orcs and goblins are essentially like crypto colonialized people who are oppressed.
Really?
I mean, that's the argument, right? That like it's a fantasy. Like I could basically go and kill the Indians or the blacks or whatever and not feel guilty because they're orcs. I mean, that's the argument. So now we need to like really make that people conscious of that fact.
It's definitely flipped into to Wizards back in June. I play a lot of Magic, as you know, but I guess the audience doesn't know. And I got an advertisement from Magic that you could get these alternative cards with gay stuff all over it.
Oh no!
And,
really?
Yeah. So they changed. They took all of their gay characters, which I think they've been doing that since about 2010. They started slipping that into the game, or no, it was about 2014. Yep, 2014. It's always then whenever everything shifted to that. So 2014, they started making all these characters be gay. And then they started doing their gay art in June, and you could buy the special edition where it's the alternative card art where the gay characters are getting married and doing drag shows for 5-year-olds.
I know. Well, the difference for us. I mean, I hate to say it, but like when we were kids and we would look at like D&D stuff, you'd see like a halfling, you'd be like, yeah, that thing looks pretty faggoty, but it wasn't an outright faggot. And now you're like, that is just.
The thing is, we made halflings cool, and that, the whole thing, the Lord of the Rings, like the whole Sam Frodo thing in the movies had that gay undertone, and it didn't matter, and it wasn't pushed in a gross way. But
dude,
it was.
But the thing is like that's a class difference in British culture, right? That's the commissioned officer and his batsman are like, that has to do with like the difference between the way we like sent out like people to fight our wars and the way they sent people out to fight their wars, and like a highly class culture versus our hiddenly class culture. So I don't know, like I do think that like Elijah Wood and Sean Astin kind of pushed it because they didn't seem to get it, and it was like, wow, that's kind of gross. Like, kiss me, Lord Nelson. Didn't like that. but I mean, in the books, I never got that. That's not the impression at all.
Yeah, they didn't make it happen on the screen though. You could feel it, but you didn't see it. It wasn't overt or anything. And now I'm afraid that it would be overt. And yeah, I'm staying as clear away from the new Lord of the Rings series as possible. Just as I've stayed away from the recent Star Trek stuff. Have you gotten into that?
Okay, so I tried to watch this is hard for me, man. I like go and then get snake bit, but the most recent one, it's kind of the best, except they made the Uhura character this super genius. Do you know about this last season?
No idea.
Okay, so what it does is it tells the story of Captain Pike. Captain Pike was the captain of the Enterprise before Kirk, but he has a tragic death. We know this because of like the original series and this two-part episode that was created basically from a pilot episode of Star Trek, TOS. Anyway, they're playing with that convention, and it's not as bad as like the other stuff, but there's enough in it that is just like I can't take it, you know?
Right. Yeah, the Stacey Abrams coming out with the gappy teeth. Of course, I saw that, and that was insane. President of Earth? No,
I know.
please,
I know.
never make that happen. And how it relates also to because they had the series with Scott Bakula. Now they're doing a continuation of Quantum
I thought
Leap.
that was trash too.
Of course, but
because that had the whole that was the series that had Vulcan AIDS.
What?
You don't remember that?
No.
Enterprise? Yeah, basically there was like this entire Vulcan AIDS subplot. Dude, you should be happy you missed it.
Yeah, I watched the first couple episodes of the series and then the around the season finale. So, and I didn't really give it love and attention. I was too busy living my life at that time. And yeah,
you kind of checked out around like Voyager. That was the last like you were really in for.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, I spent way too much time with that. But it really wasn't terrible overall. It was, yeah. I mean, none of them measure up to the original series or Next Generation, which, yeah. But I had a lot of fun with Voyager and Deep Space Nine, and the 90s were just better times. But it was the beginning of the end. All of the stuff was set up to fall.
No, I agree. You look back and you can see all of the seeds. So like going back and you watch like Voyager or I think Deep Space Nine is the superior series, but you can see all the things that annoy you like intensely about current entertainment in miniature in those programs, which is one reason why it's like much more enjoyable to go back and watch the TOS stuff.
Or I guess in a way it's fun to watch this stuff and see where they seeded something and how it grew into whatever monstrosity it is right now. But I was going to say about Quantum Leap because I see that they're doing a continuation of that series, and now I'm thinking back on how I felt about the show, and I loved it when I was growing up, and now I think, okay, so Sam was leaping back to make sure that the liberal thing happened. So it was, it was always some kind of, it was always a cudgel used for political things as well. And I didn't even think about it watching the show, but now looking at it with my 42-year-old eyes, I'm just like, oh, okay. Yeah, this is this is what's happening here.
Element. This is clearly a show that has a leftist kind of agenda. But I think about like the people who were able to enjoy it, like my grandparents who were really conservative. They didn't make it impossible for them to enjoy.
Right.
Because it was generally grounded in like human situations. So you didn't feel like you were merely watching a political allegory.
Occasionally it was, though. There was
like
a Weatherman episode, and
but I think that's inferior Quantum Leap. I think that's where it isn't
right.
as good. I think the great episodes are the smaller episodes.
Yeah, where he's in a small town and everything's sort of self-contained in there. I mean, all of the shows that I've spent so much time with, that it's given me an emotional investment to it, and feeling the feelings of all these characters and everything like that while I was growing up meant something. And now I don't think I could ever give myself to a show that way, just because everything that I've grown up with betrayed me. And we're looking at a lot of stuff that existed and never asked for any emotional commitment. And that kind of stuff is where it's at, really.
Yeah.
You know, where.
No, I think I'm pretty much with you. I don't really want. I have a hard time investing in entertainment in the same way, but I wonder if that's just a part of like getting older and becoming more mature, in addition to like being like irritated with the way politics is going in the culture.
So back to Star Wars, looping all the way back around. It seemed like that they were going to do right by us with the Mandalorian series, and a couple of other sparkles, I guess, with the other stuff that they came out. Rogue One seemed okay. I wasn't really upset by that one. I was definitely upset by the Solo movie, but Rogue One seemed all right. And you always think that everything's going to be okay, and then they turn around and they get you with something else. Have you seen have you watched any of the Obi-Wan stuff?
I did. It was trash.
Really? What happened? Tell me. Or just no spoilers, I guess, in case somebody doesn't want spoilers out there.
Well, the short version is it really should have been like a movie. It should have been about an hour and a half long. So it was dragged out. It was clearly written that way. It shouldn't have had the Leia focus that it had. It should have been focused around Luke. There were a bunch of problems like that. There are continuity issues around like Anakin. It's just like, when last we met, you were, okay, how many fucking times we're going to meet after like, the final showdown. A lot of stuff like that. But, the big problem is Disney blew it with Star Wars. It devalued its brand. And then they come out and they have my understanding is they have no like Star Wars movies coming out in the next year or two. So it's all television. It's like they're just hoping that like they're going to take like a She-Hulk strategy around this stuff. And then like there's this new show, Andor, and it's weird like to be irritated by this. But like there's a guy in the Andor show, as good as the show might be, he says shit. I mean, really, do I want people saying shit in Star Wars?
Yeah, I don't think that really suits the world whatsoever. And even, if we were playing the Westing game back in the late 90s, when we hung out all the time, if we were playing a game and one of our characters said shit to somebody, the rest of the table would have just rioted.
Yeah, you would say, no, that's not Star Wars. We don't do that. Well, this is the problem. This is the way Disney thinks. Well, maybe we've watered down the brand so much. We need to give it a little bit of an edge. Let's have somebody say shit. It's like, you don't even know what you own, Disney.
And what's really edgy about shit anyway? It's it's legal to say on regular television right now, and the funny thing is the edgiest stuff that you can do is be against whatever they're trying to promote and stuff down your face at this point. And Disney's such a huge part of it,
Andy, right? That's the mysterious thing. Like, why do it? It seems like you have this brand, you almost ruined this brand, and then in order not to and try to save the brand, you want to turn it into something even further from what the brand is. I just wonder what halfwits are like in charge of this stuff. Well, I know
they don't.
Kennedy and all those.
Yeah,
but I know who's in charge of it. But it's madness.
Well, I mean, Disney's long been a rape farm, and now they get to do it to franchises as well.
Well, you know
So
what's going to happen. Here's the next thing I think. I think what we're going to do is like, how long until Disney gets Harry Potter and turns it into like a multi-season show on Disney Plus? Like, let's have a season of like Harry Potter every year. It seems like utterly predictable the way our culture is going to go.
right. Yeah, they're going to get a hold of everything. Is Terminator? Do you know about this? That Terminator was floating up in the air and no one had it for a little while. Did somebody? I'm sure somebody picked it up.
I didn't know about that. I knew like there was some Predator stuff. I don't remember the controversy around that, but that's interesting. Terminator.
Yeah, this was a couple of years ago. I didn't follow up on it to see who bought it, but I think it was somebody that was kind of independent, and I haven't seen them do anything with it. So that tells me that there's definitely not Disney money put to it. But
Well, there's another damaged brand. I mean,
yeah,
like for people of our generation, Terminator 2, I mean, for as many people who love Terminator 1, Terminator 2 for us growing up, man, that came out at the perfect damn age. And our minds were blown. And it's
yeah,
like,
that was
you
the
could have,
movie.
like, yeah.
That was the movie that I mean, it was everything at that time. Man, one of my friends is way into Terminator, and we just make Terminator references at each other all the time.
No, yeah, man. And now it's just like somebody says we're going to do something with a new Terminator movie. You're like, yeah, I don't get what teenage kid and like bitch I'm not interested are you going to put in this movie?
Well, that's the thing is following Terminator 2. There's never been anything as good, and one wasn't better. It's just nothing could be as good as Terminator 2 as far as that series goes, and maybe it should have stopped there.
James Cameron, do you see James Cameron? He's banking on Avatar 2.
Oh no, yeah. Well, it's kind of perfect for the metaverse age that we're about to head into.
That's right. Let's bring on the diversity Smurfs.
Yeah, we're colonizing Smurfs, and yeah. Well, hail to the colonizers, and yeah. The reason I picked the song that I'm playing here at the end is because they sampled the Mando theme, and I think the theme is awesome. Actually, I really liked the first couple of seasons of Mandalorian, and then their politics from the show spilled out into the real world, and they fired one of their main characters because she dared have an opinion off of the Disney reservation. Yeah, it's where they lost me, and so I don't want to give them anything else, and I'll just talk about it and say that it's garbage, and we'll spend almost an hour here trashing everything that they've come up with, or not come up with, because they, as I always talk to Mud about this, is that they don't make anything new. They just take old things and turn them into garbage. So that's what they've done. And if producing garbage is what they're about, then we're gonna make fun of it and
right
and and be sad about it. But I'm not really that sad. I think that whenever art really comes back, it won't be in the same form as it used to be. When we start seeing people making things, it's going to be something real, something human, and we'll really get the human feel out of it.
Well, I think you're right. I think that's what people crave.
Yeah, we've been starved of it for ages, and it's kind of weird because it came from a format that's really fascinated us. As far as science fiction, we were super fascinated by science fiction, and now that science fiction has become science fact, we want to go back even further to where we're looking at what makes us us.
Well, I think that one of my favorite arguments about science fiction is that, I mean, here, like, science fiction was really healthy from about 1930 to 1970. That was where you had like the great science fiction writers, and it was all about like trying to make your peace with the technology that was coming. Like, I can understand it, I can live with it, it's going to be okay. And somehow people just capitulated, and when people capitulated, they didn't give a shit about science fiction. Science fiction becomes like science fantasy. People, and I think like I think one of the things that's interesting is it's a weird thing. Like science fiction looks forward to the future, whereas fantasy looks generally to like the past. And if you look at places where science fiction is booming, it's China. China has great science fiction writers. Well, China believes it has a future. We have shit science fiction writers. We don't believe we have a future. Seems like
we're an empire on the decline. Yeah, they're an empire that's growing. They're an empire that's building, and we're declining. And so they have, that's interesting. But a lot of the science fiction was dystopic, and we also live in a dystopia now. So it's all there. Anyway, Dr. Creep, Gods of War, from his album Resident 2030, utilizes the Mando theme. Yeah, it's awesome. I highly recommend this album. So, get into your search engine of choice, hopefully not the one that starts with G, and find Dr. Creep, Gods of War.
How did we conjure up a monster in our midst? And why? That is the question we must answer.
Chemtrails are backdrops of new scenes. Holographic enemies just like blue beam. A war of the gods to cold. You'll lose heat. Floating ice blocks, you're lost in new seas. Uncharted landscapes after the crime scene. On the moon, in the shadows they watching. Geomagnetic, I'm keeping asteroids tossing. Chromosome fused at the planet's high beam. Magic upon me, you know it's godly. Master of body, Lockheed party with Roddy. Get spotted the body, your lobby. The copy, the plotted, the lobby. Ducati and grimy, you know we're chopping the shoddy. Marching the Bobby, the spotted, the watching the ball. We knocking the blocks down, you know we stopping the fall. Indivisible, the critical, it's mental, it's raw. I'm stuck in the pot of the rock in the box, and hearing the call, breaking the law. Up against the gods of war, settle scores. Gotta also know without a metaphor. United numbers, what we for, we can't afford. No time for losses, we the battle lords. Up against the gods of war, shake the core. Fire shots at the battle where we're headed towards. Reason for giving them their season for making them dead. Bleeding them off with their hands, treason I'm singing the red. War casualty shopping, victims for autopsies. 4 horsemen, sharp eyes and bodies. They all watching Himalayan wave stoppers. Y'all small rocky shapeshifters, full moon is more shocking. Theories keep shifting to pushing back the final hour. Make it quake, rock the craton, making tidal power. Dropping dead birds off the parks and bridal showers. Destroy the Great Wall, Stonehenge and Eiffel Tower. No pad, get devoured, ravages, cast shadows. Defensive stamps, we attack and snap your fucking gallows. Burn your camps with kerosene and high candles. Bring your whole team to the stand for dry panels. We the gamble that shot the flannels of news anger. Speak the madness, you crack kids never knew anger. Flew danger like he was the beat. Had to move later, come with the fall like creator. The human mutator. Up against the gods of war, settle scores. Gotta also know without a metaphor. United numbers, what we for, we can't afford. No time for losses, we the battle lords. Up against the gods of war, shake the core. Fire shots at the battle where we're headed towards. Reason for giving them their season for making them dead. Bleeding them off with their hands, treason I'm singing the red.
The sun became black as sackcloth, and a third of the earth was burnt up. A third of the trees and all the green grass. And then from the smoke came locusts on the earth with the power of scorpions. And for destroying the destroyers of the earth.
How things are gonna be.
Billy, with all those explosions, they knocked the world off its axis. And if it comes back, everything could come back to normal.
Well, would it take another explosion to do that? Straighten it up?
I don't know. It could do it all by itself.
Nothing good ever just happens by itself. No matter how much you want it to. You gotta make it.